cause this to hurt us in higher rates.
Now, Mayor, it's no surprise that this pandemic caught the country, for the lack of a better word, with the pants down. Now, since then, we've been working in having ways of dealing with the situation. In Mt Vernon, what have you done, what you've been doing to deal with this? In regards to testing, medical facilities, what have you done to address or create awareness to the people of Mt Vernon in precautions that they should take?
Well, look, I can tell you our administration was on this in February. We started doing Facebook Lives. We started changing protocols and updating protocols in our police and fire departments, especially with our first responders. We started asking for testing very, very early in this incident. We finally got our testing center, and it's almost about a week and a half at the Mt Vernon Neighborhood Health Center at 107 West 4th Street. So we are testing people there. Our center came here in Mt Vernon the same day that the Yonkers Center opened. We've been in constant communication with the Montefiore Mt Vernon Hospital site, and we spoke with them about expanding their capacity as per the governor's orders. And so they've been in compliance around that. So one of the things that we did here in Mt Vernon, everyone has an emergency operations center and team, and we are no different. But this was very different in that you didn't want to bring your top leaders and put them all in one room and try and figure out how to strategize around this pandemic. And so we have been meeting virtually, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday through Zoom, through, free conference call. We have an incident command officer in our Chief Odindo out of the fire department. We have operational leaders, our Commissioner of Fire, Police, DPW, and Office of Emergency Management have all worked together, and we've created outreach around hunger, around human services, around mental health, because we knew that this would take some of those, that some of those services would really be required, that it was not just about medical services and testing, but this was going to have a great impact on the community fiscally, as well as mentally, socially, and emotionally. And so from the very beginning, we started planning how to address the needs of the community around that.
Mayor, how many mobile centers do you have for testing and also antibody places to see those that were infected but perhaps never knew?
So, we have one testing center, and one testing center is all we need. We're 4 square miles. So from anywhere in Mt Vernon, you can get to that testing center if you need to be tested. Antibody testing has been done over at Food Town. It's being done over at Stop and Shop. So there are different places that are offering the antibody testing for free in coordination with the New York State Department of Health.
Have you noticed, what about in your police department, your fire department? What percentage of people that infected and affected by this have you?
I definitely think in our police department, we have about 212 officers. We know we had about 25 of them who tested COVID positive. We had another, 15 to 20 that were out on quarantine. In our fire department, we had about 15 of our firefighters test positive, and another 18 to 20 that were in and out at one time or another due to quarantine. We've had people in DPW, recreation, water department. This is nothing that says we're just going to attack first responders. Anyone who has any community contact and contact with the public is going to be impacted. But the important thing also that we also have to recognize is we can't even say that their positive status for some people had to do with line of duty. We live in a society, we go to supermarkets, we go home, we have families. So it's not always easy to track the point of infection. But for some of our first people, we knew that it came from line of duty interaction.
Now, Mayor, there is a tremendous impact because of this crisis, not just lives, but also a physical impact.
Absolutely.
How is this impacting your city? Because taxes, work, wages.
Mhm.
It's affecting this at many levels. And
Absolutely.
and even after this pandemic is gone, we're still going to feel the impact of it.
Mhm, mhm.
How is it impacting your city in that, that
Mount Vernon, we had our challenges. We were fiscally strapped before this, but with
exactly.
this, with loss of parking revenue, with loss of ticketing, with loss of tax revenue from sales tax, with most of your stores and businesses being closed, except for essential businesses, so our tax collections are definitely drastically decreased. And then also you're dealing with having people pay their residential and their commercial taxes. And when they've been hard hit as well, that money is going to trickle in much slower than it usually has. And so, cash flow becomes a major issue. So city government is no different than your house. We talk about microeconomics. Microeconomics is your house. If you don't have revenues coming in, then you have to look at cost cutting measures and also look at other ways to get revenue. So the same is here with the city. We depend on funding from the federal government, from the state, from the county, and we know that some of those revenues are going to be decreased. So we are definitely, like other communities around us and across the country, realizing the financial impact that is not going to be quickly fleeting, but is going to be long-standing, and we are making every effort to plan to address that in cost-cutting measures, as well as finding new and alternative sources of revenue. Because
Now,
you just can't cut costs. You also have to find other ways to bring in revenue.
right. Now, Mayor, I know that the opening of your city does not depend on you, but on the governor of the state of New York.
Mhm,
But you have an opinion
mhm.
when it comes to opening the economy.
Absolutely, absolutely.
What is your opinion? Are we going a little bit too fast on reopening? Should we
Well,
take it?
look,
Go ahead.
so the governor might reopen the state in different sections because New York is not equal. Let's be very clear. There are, Mount Vernon has more cases in 4 square miles than certain counties have in their entire county. And the same is with New Rochelle, White Plains, Greenburgh, and Yonkers. So Westchester County, New York City, and Long Island have been much harder hit, much, much harder hit than most of the other counties. Rockland and Orange, they have cases, but not to the magnitude that we do. And those communities and counties are also not as densely populated as we are here. So the opening strategy is going to happen probably on a regional basis and in different waves. And what we're doing here in Mount Vernon, we're focusing on a resilience campaign, and we're already starting to have the conversations with different industries around what best practices we, as the city of Mount Vernon, are expecting of them as we start to reopen these businesses. So whether it's around food service or hospitality, whether it's around personal care with hair, nails, and barber shops, whether it's around retail businesses or convenience stores, each of those stores have different functionalities. They have different risks and cautions. And so they will have different policies, practices, and procedures that we will expect them to put in place to ensure maximum safety. We are not going to open in a post-COVID era. We're going to operate in a COVID era. This is not going away. And we can't wait until there's no new cases of COVID to reopen. But we have to make sure that we are putting in place the necessary protocols and practices to ensure maximum safety for our residents as well as our businesses.
Now, Maya, lots of people are asking, when are we going back to normal? I think what we call normal, the back to normal, is no longer normal. I think our lives have changed forever.
Mhm.
How we see things, how we protect ourselves.
Mhm.
What is your view on that? Is this the new normal? Of course, let's say COVID is gone, but
Mhm.
our lifestyle has changed.
Absolutely, our lifestyles have changed. And this is no different than 9/11. 9/11 changed our lives forever. Before 9/11, we were not taking off our shoes at the airport, taking off our coats. There were different practices that we used, but in a post 9/11 era, new laws and new protections have come up. And in a post COVID or whatever you want to call it era, there will be new protections that will be put in place. And I don't think it's just about the government and how they're feeling. But when I speak to a lot of residents, when I speak to a lot of business owners, they're concerned and they're saying when we reopen, we want to make sure that we have enough space in between booths and tables for people so that people will feel comfortable. There are many people that are saying, I don't want to go to crowded restaurants. I don't want to go to big stadium events with tens of thousands of people in there because I feel that might be a risk to my health. So there's definitely going to be a change, and the change is not just going to be based on people's on government regulation. It's going to be based on people's comfort level, and how comfortable they are entering different venues and operating in different environments.
Correct. Restaurants that probably in the past used to take 50 people, now they might have to cut it to 30. So which means revenues that used to come at a certain amount now comes much less. So which prices that used to be at this amount now might have to be increased in order to make up for that loss. And then
those are potential realities, but also I think many of our restaurants have learned how to also operate with takeout. So, some people are having increased revenues in takeout. So if there are less number of people who are in the restaurant, does not mean that revenues have to decline, especially if during this era they've learned how to build a robust delivery and takeout service as well.
but have you heard about the problem with the takeout, like Uber Eats, and all these other companies? They take about 30% of whatever is the gross value of that meal, which means restaurants that have overhead charges and employees and all that, now they're making much less. So
And that's why, so, again, you are assuming, or people are assuming, we have to depend on Uber Eats. And I believe that if, you work with your local chamber and you decide that the chamber is going to come together, and if delivery is going to become a much bigger part of your revenue, then how do local chambers come together and create their own delivery platform for their communities, so that there is far less overhead being given to an outside entity like Uber, and the other different food delivery platforms. So this will take some, there's going to be much more coordination of services. There's going to be shared services and opportunities. And, we can either compete against one another, or we can cooperate with one another, understanding that each of these individual businesses faces the same challenge. And so I think there are a lot of good opportunities for businesses to come together and work together in this new environment that we're conducting business.
Maya, before we go into another segment, tell us, what have you learned, and what do you think the nation has learned with this pandemic? What is the lessons for the future?
I mean, I think people have to definitely make sure that they're paying attention to what's happening. A lot of people just looked to federal government and did not make plans because on the way they saw the federal government react or not react. We live locally, but we are operating in a global society. And I think people just wished, okay, it's happening in China, it's not going to affect us. Oh, it's happening in Italy, it's not going to affect us. And when it got to a point where it started to affect us, there were some people who were prepared. Well, I don't think any of us were prepared for the way it impacted us, but I think we will pay attention a little more to what is happening globally, and not just wait for someone to say that it's an issue here. We started to plan as I saw things happening in Seattle, Washington. Before we had any numbers, we were really having the hard conversations about how we're going to respond to this, because there's no way that we believe that it wouldn't impact us. We are living right next to New York City. And as someone had said back in October at a meeting we had, that the New York City transit system, the Metro North and the subways, are the biggest disease incubator probably in the Northern Hemisphere and potentially in the world. So if an epidemic or a pandemic hit New York City with all of the people commuting from Westchester and Mt Vernon back and forth into New York City, there's no way that we could have believed that this would have not impacted us. People wanted to not believe that it would impact us, and they put their heads in the sand. But we as government officials do not have the liberty or the luxury of ignoring what's happening around us and hoping that it does not impact our community. We have to be forward thinking and we have to plan as opposed to just respond. And I think our country was put in a response mode because the ultimate leadership of our country were not planning for this inevitability.
Now, Mayor, let's go into another segment.
Mm-hmm.
Even though all this going on, I know that you are in your office on a daily basis, conducting
Yes.
business of Mount Vernon.
Mm-hmm.
But you are very considerate of the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
Many are at home,
Mm-hmm.
but you're there at work. So we kind of are in a half pause kind of mode. What other stuff have you been working on? Separate from the COVID, things that in Mount Vernon, the financial state of Mount Vernon,
Oh.
the relationship between you and the controller. What is going on? What do you think that the people of Mount Vernon needs to know? Tell us about the progress, and tell us also about the setbacks that you couldn't do because of other factors.
Well, I mean, some of the progress is that our land use boards, you've had to shift how you do business and in-person meetings of land use boards so that different construction and development projects could go forward. Of course, those were stymied, but now we are bringing all of those boards back, and they're having Zoom meetings, and different developers and businesses wanting to do business with Mount Vernon can definitely come before the architectural review board, the zoning board, the planning board. They can come before them via Zoom. And so that's something that we've been able to set up. Our building department is still operating, and they were able to catch up on some of the backlog in their office, as well as to accept new applications for renovations, for updates, for construction. So when the governor does release the construction hold on non-essential projects, that will be ready to go as a city. Some of the other things that we're doing is we're continuing to look at the training and the equipment and the resource needs that we have in our public safety areas of DPW, of police and fire. So we've continued to look at those issues and look to purchase equipment so that garbage can be picked up, so that fires can be put out, and so that the police can continue to provide public safety services to our residents. In our youth bureau and in our recreation department, we're still focusing on what we're going to do for the summer for kids, for seniors, because we still have to prepare to open. But we have to also now look at what that reopening will look like. What will summer camp, what will after school look like, and how will we incorporate COVID responsibilities and COVID protocols into these programs. We're continuing to work with the city council on passing different resolutions. We are working with the state comptroller, as we announced before COVID that the state comptroller was coming in to do an audit. And the state comptroller is doing that, but from a distance. They are, making phone calls. They are sending requests via email and asking for information to be sent to them. So we continue to move forward with the state comptroller. It's going to take much longer in this environment to accomplish some things, but we can't just put everything to the side and not work on it.
Now you have somebody here on live stream,
Mm-hmm.
Teresa Allen,
Okay.
saying, amazing job you are doing in Mount Vernon.
Thank you.
My family appreciates your dedication. Glad we voted for you.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Thank you so much.
Now, all these things that you just mentioned, we're looking into buying these, we're looking into buying that to provide a better service to the people of your city. All this buying requires money.
Well, we have funds. I mean, some of these things we have funds from other means. We have money still through HUD to get fire trucks. I mean, unfortunately, you can't use that for garbage trucks or for police vehicles, but because HUD focuses on protection of property, fire does that. I mean, if one house catches fire and a block catches fire and you don't have proper fire equipment, then that makes it challenging. So we will utilize HUD monies as we have in the past to help upgrade our fire equipment. And so that's one of the ways that we're doing that. Even when you have to make cuts, like I said, in your house, regardless of whether or not you're losing revenues, you cannot just cut yourself out of a financial crisis. We were down garbage trucks before COVID. We have to be able to pick up garbage trucks. We borrowed trucks from New York City. They took them back. We've borrowed 2 trucks from Yonkers. They're going to need their trucks back. And so we've been able to identify and locate some used trucks. And there is money in the budget, and we have approved that appropriation to purchase some used trucks until we can go out and buy new ones and bond for new ones. So the business of the city still has to happen. You just have to work collaboratively, and just as you would in your home, you have to look at what is necessary expenses and what are nice expenses. Nice expenses you put to the side. Necessary expenses that are critical to continuing to operate government have to happen.
Now, Mayor, I have seen your police fleet, your cars at the police department, completely outdated.
Definitely.
Okay, there is some that if they have to do a chase to stop a criminal who might have just committed a terrible crime, your police car might break down in the middle of the chase.
And well, it's illegal to do high-speed chases. That's for
Well,
television, not for police. You cannot recklessly drive at 90 miles an hour through a residential neighborhood.
I never put a number to the mile.
But I just want to be clear that we don't do high-speed chases.
Well, let's talk
like
about
television.
Let's talk about the low-speed chase. The way those vehicles are, they outdated.
Well, look, we need to update our fleet, but then there are also other monies that are available, like 666 monies that are used as asset forfeiture monies that are available to our police department. The challenge is that when we have gone and requested those monies, they're not part of the city's general fund. These are monies that are set aside for the use of police purchases. Unfortunately, the comptroller has not moved and has not allowed for those purchases. And so, these are some of the challenges that we are dealing with. We do have access to certain revenues and to certain streams of funding to be able to replace police cars, but the comptroller's office has not cut those checks upon request. We have $1,986,000 of funding sitting up in the New York State Department of Transportation for us to do street repaving and repair. Unfortunately, we've not been able to utilize these monies because these are reimbursable monies. And so we could say we're going to spend $100,000, then we bill the state, they send us that money back, and then we take that same $100,000. We could do that 19 times, or we could spend $200,000 and then go back and do that 10 times. But the Mt Vernon comptroller is not releasing those monies so that we can do things of that nature. And it's very frustrating and it's very challenging. And I spoke about that at a hearing back in February at the city council's hearing when we were looking to move the budget. So there are monies that are available and should be available from a state level as well as a federal level. Unfortunately, that the comptroller either due to her lack of knowledge or lack of skills or competency refuses to work with the city around. We have tried and we have not been able and not been successful. Last week, she sent back $250,000 in funding to HUD that had been approved. So this is very frustrating reality that we're dealing with. And we are hoping that eventually someone, whether it's on the state level or federal level, will come and address the lack of cooperation of our comptroller. Right now, we're working within the framework and the guidelines that we can, and unfortunately, it makes work much more difficult, but that's the reality of where we are right now.
Mayor, I have heard this story before. If I go back to before you were elected, and 6 months before the thing with Andrew Wallace, Mayor Andrew Wallace and Mayor Richard Thomas, they had similar problems.
Absolutely.
Okay. The story remains the same, even though we have a new mayor. In your opinion, what is the issue? Why the friction? Because this friction between comptroller and mayor's office, it's causing hardship to the people you lead.
There's not a friction. I feel there is a lack of competence, period. Period.
Are you calling her incompetent?
Yes.
The day that you had the encounter at the council meeting, what words did actually transpire? Can you tell us?
What words? Well, I mean, the video was out there. I was speaking when she spoke. I sat in the front row as she presented, and I presented after her. And the entire time that I was speaking, she was screaming from the back of the room, liar, 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 you're the same as Richard Thomas. Richard Thomas, you're the same as Richard Thomas. And as she left the room, she said something to me that she was going to take me out like she took Richard Thomas out. You know,
So she
there were
feels that.
some people. There were some people that said, "Oh, you need to file a police report because she said she's going to take you out." Well, I didn't look at that as a physical threat. Um, so, look, I am not the person who is going to go back and forth. I'm not going to scurry down the hole of drama. Mount Vernon has been on front page display for its political back and forth. I'm going to deal with the harsh realities of what we deal with, and I will speak to the people and only the people who can really do something about it.
But Mayor,
Mm-hmm.
this is not drama. This is affecting the people of Mount Vernon.
Absolutely.
This is affecting the people that you promise to deliver your promises.
Right.
And because of one person, you are not able to fulfill all the promises that you made, and that's terrible. So
we have $2 million sitting in account right now in the state of New York, upstate, through the Department of Transportation. Almost 2 million, $1,986,000. So $14,000 shy of $2 million sitting in an account that we cannot access because she will not approve the front end expenses and payment of street pavement so that we can take this in stages throughout the community and get our streets paved. I mean, if we're not calling that incompetence, I don't know what to call it. And, some people will say, oh, don't say that. But you want me to get into the mind of a person and explain why they're not doing their basic jobs. And so, look, I just do not feel that she has the professional capacity and the wherewithal to oversee that office and manage the multiple moving pieces of it. And there are some people who get into positions and what they do is they manage down. And I feel that she manages down and she does not allow the people who are in her office who are competent to do certain things, do their job. That's as if I wanted to act as if I was the clerk or if I was the planning commissioner. I have people around me who are hired to do a certain job and I allow them to do their job. And that's what leaders do. But if you have to micromanage and you have to manage down, then my question, I have every right to question your competence. There is no controller in the state that you could say is sending monies back to the federal government after the federal government has already approved these monies to be dispensed to a community. That's inexplicable. But that's what we deal with on a daily basis.
And the people of Mount Vernon are suffering because of that incompetency. Now, let me make it clear that, I always try to get both sides comments on a particular issue. We have tried to reach out to her multiple times to ask her the why, but she refuses to step forward and talk to the people of Mount Vernon in this format. She said that in due time she will talk about it. I'm wondering, when is the due time? This has been going on for years now.
I mean, she'll say, oh, Mayor Howard is being disingenuous. Mayor Howard was the planning commissioner in 2016. Mayor Howard is responsible for the urban renewals audit not being done in 2016. Mayor Howard was walked out. So if anyone knows anything about an audit, you can't do an audit in the year that you're in an office. And so I was walked out of the building and fired or suspended or whatever you want to call it on December 14th, 2016. I was not there to close out the year. And most audits begin, February, March, April of the next year. I wasn't there for it. So I'm not responsible for that audit. And, she also has not done her part on giving the auditor access to her office so that they can verify and certify different bank transactions. So at the same time that she's saying we're not doing what we need to do on our end to complete the audit from 2016, she's not giving the auditors access to the information that they need to close it out. So to say that she sends back money to the federal government because our audits of 2016, 17, and 18 have not been completed, it's disingenuous because she is standing there and blocking access of the auditors to the very information that they need out of her office to complete some of the tasks so that we can close out the audit and move forward. We're ready for the audit of 2017 and 18. We're preparing for 2019 audit because we are still, we've just closed the year, but you can't close the books. And that's the other thing. People don't understand. Even, Acting Mayor Wallace said, we've closed the books, we've closed the books. You can't close books when books from the previous years have not been closed. And so until those books are audited, then it's impossible to fully close books of any organization fiscally.
Well, I have another comment here from Teresa Allen. Deborah Reynolds is not transparent at all. My grandma tried to pay her taxes and she called her office and she was very nastily to her. I'm just bringing up because this is a live stream interview and people are commenting. So
these are the complaints that we've been fielding for the past few weeks. City Hall, I guess, became closed to the public on about March 17th. And that was based on the governor's orders. If you call her office and you listen to her voicemail, it will kind of just really tell you who you're dealing with. She's saying, oh, the city council didn't pass legislation to take away penalties and interest on taxpayers. They have passed that legislation. So the tax there, will not be penalties on and interest on people who are paying their taxes late. Then she goes on to say, you can't come in and pay your taxes because the mayor closed City Hall and doesn't allow you to come in. That's very interesting. Governor Cuomo, gave us orders and directives. So I didn't close City Hall. And even then, the mail still operates. And so mail comes into our building all of the time, and people have sent in their checks to pay for their taxes. Those checks have been delivered to her office. But she has taken weeks and over a month in several cases to deposit checks from the taxpayers who are trying to pay their taxes to ensure that the city has revenue so that we can continue to move forward. And you have a lot of people who wanted to make sure that they didn't incur any taxes, penalties and interest. And so, they were waiting on tax bills and they've paid. So, we're just getting word from some of the same people who expressed concern about their tax checks not being cashed, that a month later, that they're finally seeing their checks being deposited into their accounts. It's very difficult. Look, I'm a person, I've been an executive for 30 years. I am known for convening people, bringing people together to work. That is something that I ran on. I have no problem sitting down with the controller, but the controller has to be willing to sit down. She doesn't show up for meetings, and she's had this behavior before I got here. She sits on the Urban Renewal Board, but she's missed 28 months of meetings, and she's a statutory member. So if you feel that you want to make sure the people's money is being spent and handled with in the best way, the best thing for you to do is come to the table and be a part of the discussion. Today is the first Board of Estimate meeting that she's participated in months. And so, these things are available to her. No one is keeping her away from the table. She's kept herself away from the table. And it's frustrating because all I want to do is focus on getting the work done for the community. And it's very difficult to do that when you do not have your fiscal officer sitting at the table and working through these challenges with you. That makes, COVID in Mount Vernon even more difficult to handle than maybe in other communities.
now, Mayor, who is your boss?
Who is my boss?
Yes, the people of Mount Vernon?
Absolutely, the voters. I mean, that's who brought me in, but I'm
Correct.
also answerable to the oath, to my oath of office.
Correct.
I can be removed from office like anyone else.
Correct, Mayor. That's exactly what I was going to ask. So who is the controller's boss and what can her bosses do to remove her? Because lots of people are not happy with the work that she's been doing. She's not answering. She's not justifying her actions and the things that she do, but she's still there. And as long as she's there, Mount Vernon, the people of Mount Vernon are suffering. So what can the people do to hold the employee accountable for what they are doing?
Look, they can vote her out of office, when it's time for her to run again.
when it's
They can
time.
write letters to the governor, they can write letters to the state controller. You know, they can do these things, but unfortunately, I don't know how much impact it will have. We are putting together our information and we're sharing it with our state representatives in hopes that someone would be willing to step up and help bring resolution to our situation. I would not even have a problem with the state controller taking over the finances of Mount Vernon so that we can really have an understanding of where we are and that we could move forward with the fiscal operations of Mount Vernon. But there has to be political will to do that. And so, look, there are different things in the toolbox, and we are willing and ready and able to utilize whatever is at our disposal to make sure that we're able to manage this city in a fiscally appropriate fashion. But it is not easy, and there are no quick answers, but we are definitely looking to see what our options are and how we can move this forward. Because the people of Mount Vernon deserve better.
Right. Now, Mayor, as you know, there is a delay. So there are questions that are coming in after we are in a different subject already.
Okay.
So the questions are from the audience, are not mine. So please don't take these.
Go for it.
I'm just asking the questions that are coming to me.
No problem.
Was PPE equipment purchased from the black market? And how do you know, meaning you, that the PPE was authentic in protecting the people that were wearing it? And did you pay with your campaign funds? Was that legal?
I paid with not my campaign funds. I did make payments of PPE equipment from PPE providers. So my inaugural ball funds were not used to go to the black market. Okay, be very clear. There were PPE equipment that was purchased with cash, especially in the beginning parts when we ran low. And I said it before, I don't draw back on that. And I am sitting here in my office any day and every day. And if there are any investigative authorities that have an issue with that, please come and have a conversation with me. Because our governor and other leaders said by hook and crook, they were going to get what they need to take care of the people who they are answerable to. And so, you know, I'm sure if the governor was able to get ventilators to make sure that he was ready to meet the surge, then he would have done what he needed to do. And we needed PPE masks to make sure that our first responders were covered, because what was supplied to us by the state and the county was just not enough, and we couldn't expect them to do that. So yes, some equipment was purchased with cash, and it was authentic material. So I don't know why people want to continue to ask the question as if I'm going to run away and the answer is going to change. It's not going to change. Next.
Next question. Now, Mayor,
Yes.
going forward, let's say that the pandemic, it's under control and we need to resume our lives in as normal as we possibly can. What are your first priorities now, away from the pandemic, for the city of Mount Vernon? What are the things that you're working on? Oh, before we go to that.
Oh, absolutely, economic recovery. That's an easy question. Everyone has to recover from this economically, else anything else that we want to do is not going to work if we can't get our economy up and running and going.
And what would be your first process? You would have a process. I'm going to tackle these or that. So what would be your first steps?
Well, what we're working on right now is looking at what positions we might have to cut, because those are cuts. But when it comes to revenues, as we're opening up the businesses again, as I said earlier in this broadcast, that we will make sure that policies and protocols and procedures are put in place to ensure the safe operations of our restaurants, our personal care businesses, our retail outlets, our manufacturing industry. We have to make sure that as we reopen business and industry in Mount Vernon, that we have the proper protocols in place to ensure the safety of the public as well as the people who are working in those businesses.
Now, I heard you using the word cut. Is layoffs on the horizon in the city of Mount Vernon?
Everything is on the table right now. We have to make sure that we are being fiscally responsible. When you do not have the level of revenue that you need to bring in, you do have to cut some expenditures. So if there are positions that are open, those positions might be lost to attrition. but we have to make sure that they're in the proper areas. It's not that we can have critical positions remain open. So, we're looking at everything right now. Layoffs is not off the table. Reductions in workforce is not off the table. It's never off the table. Is that the first thing that we're going to look to do? No. If there are open positions that we might not need to fill immediately right now at this moment, those are the first things that we'll look at. But layoffs are not off the table.
Now, Mayor, with all the wants that we want, there is an invoice attached to it.
Mhm.
Now, with all the losses that we have, not just in your municipality, in Yonkers and other places,
Everywhere across the country, we're not unique.
exactly, everywhere across the country,
Mhm.
we have to make up for all that lost.
Mhm.
Tax increases also on the table.
Well, our budget was already passed for this year. So, unlike, like right now, Yonkers is in the process of doing their budget because their budget goes from July 1st to June 30th. So for a community like Yonkers or someone who has different tax cycles, that might be a way for them to make up revenue right now. But our budget goes from the calendar year, from January 1st to December 31st. And so tax increases on residents right now is not an option for us to generate revenue.
Not an option now, but the impact of the pandemic is going to be felt for a long time to come.
We'll have to see at that time. I mean, I'm not going to speak about taxing people, 7, 8 months away from now. That's not part of the conversation. We'll see what's needed to be done when we get to October, September, October, as we're developing the budget for next year.
Now, Mayor, I know that Memorial Field is on pause now. It's not an essential thing at the moment, Memorial Field.
Mm-hmm.
But let's go back to a month behind when Memorial Field was part of the things that you were working.
Well, Memorial Field has not stopped. We've
No?
received our bids in. The bids came in. The Board of Legislators did vote for the full support of Memorial Field moving forward. And in our conversations with the county legislator and the county executive and the county legislators, Memorial Field is moving forward. So the county has allocated those resources for the completion of that project. And as the governor reopens construction for non-essential projects, Memorial Field will move forward. So we definitely are looking forward to do a groundbreaking for Memorial Field and, doing a ribbon cutting sometime in 2021.
Well, Mayor, this is all the time that we had.
Yes.
I thank you very much for taking the time and give us this interview.
Mhm.
But I'm going to give you the time to close our interview, to say whatever you think you need to say to the people of Mt Vernon.
Mhm.
And again, I wish you well, stay healthy, you and your family. So please take the honor of closing this interview.
Well, we definitely want to send out condolences to all who have lost someone of COVID or anything else, especially during this time when it's very difficult to grieve and connect with family and friends to support you. We want to let you know that we are praying for those who are still affected, who are in the hospital or who are at home. We want you to know that testing is available through the Mt Vernon Neighborhood Health Center and other sites. And so please, if you're experiencing symptoms and you are concerned, reach out to your medical provider and then call the 1-800 number so that you can go and get tested. We understand that the mental and the emotional impact of having to social distance and stay inside has increased, domestic violence and some people's depression and anxiety. So there are services that are available. Please go to our website, www.cmvny.com, as well as to our social media pages, and learn more about the resources that are available. We know our businesses and our small businesses have been impacted. Definitely, we're hoping that you go to take advantage of the payroll protection program loans, the small business disaster relief loans. All information cannot be spoon-fed to a community. So people have to take an active role in getting on the internet and looking up what services and opportunities are available. We will continue to distribute food into the community. And as the government of Mount Vernon, while the building is closed to the public, we want you to know that we are still here providing the essential services to the community. You can reach any of our offices via phone. All of our employees who are working from home or who are also working in the building, their phone numbers have been forwarded. The phone calls are being forwarded to them if they're working at home. We're still answering emails. We're still processing paperwork. So the government of Mount Vernon continues to be here for you. And I really want people to know that if you see people who are operating outside of the scope of business, if you see beauty parlors and nail salons and barbershops and businesses that are operating that are not supposed to operate, please reach out to our police department at 914-665-2500 because we do have our Essential Business Task Force that will go out and identify that issue and rectify it. The same thing if you see restaurants operating without personal protective equipment, let us know that. Just don't go on Facebook and rant about it, but please make sure that you take the proper steps to reach out to the people who can actually do something about it. We are here to make sure we protect the community, but we need the community to also be our eyes so that we know when things are happening that we can go and address in a way that the general public may not be able to do. But thank you, Rue, for this time. Continued health and safety to your family and to all of those who have viewed today. And I hope I've answered your questions. I'm not one to dodge them, and so here we go.
On that note, we conclude our interview. Thank you very much, Mayor, and until
Thank you.
next time.
Be well.